I always knew my sister was the favorite, but I didn't know just how far they went to keep it that way. Until the day I opened the drawer that wasn't meant for me and found the letter that changed everything. But by then, she already had the house, the car, the praise, and the life I was never even given the chance to have. My name is Claire, and this story isn't just about jealousy. It's about betrayal, not just from my sister, but from the people who raised me, growing up. My sister Danielle could do no wrong. She didn't just walk into rooms, she was introduced. Every birthday, every graduation, every big moment, she was the headline. I was the afterthought. I was quieter, more reserved. I didn't win pageants or argue at the dinner table, and that made me invisible. Our parents, especially my mother, used to say, "Danielle just needs more attention, Claire. She's got bigger things ahead." What did I have? Smaller things? Still, I didn't rebel. I didn't scream or demand fairness. I just waited. Waited for the day they'd finally see me. But they never did. After college, Danielle was given a brand new car to start her career. When I graduated, I got a used blender and a pat on the back. Danielle moved home to save money. I moved out because you're grown now, Claire. I worked 2 jobs. She worked our parents, and she always came out on top. By the time I turned 30, I had built a modest life for myself. Nothing fancy, but it was mine. Meanwhile, Danielle still lived in a family home, still drove the car they bought her, still called the shots at Sunday dinner like she was the queen of something. And my parents let her. No, they worshipped her. When our father got sick, I visited every day after work. Danielle posted selfies from the hospital room. Guess who got thanked in his final letter? Not me. When he passed, I was devastated. But the real shock came 2 weeks later. When the will was read, the house? Danielle. The savings account? Danielle. The classic car he rebuilt in the garage, the one I helped him work on every weekend for years? Danielle. There was a pause after the lawyer read the list. He looked over his glasses and said, "Claire, it appears your father left you his wristwatch." That was it, a watch, like a consolation prize. I didn't cry in front of anyone. I just smiled, nodded, took the watch, and left before they could see my hands shake. Danielle, of course, held court at the post-will brunch, laughing, toasting, acting like the new heir to the family empire. Mom clinked glasses with her, saying how proud Dad would have been. No one even noticed I didn't show up. But a week later, everything changed. I came by the house to collect a few old books I had stored in the attic. Danielle wasn't home. Mom was napping. I moved through the house like a ghost. It felt like a museum of everything I didn't get. As I was heading out, I passed by Dad's old study. Something stopped me. The door was cracked open. The light from the hallway fell across the desk like a spotlight. I wasn't sure why I stepped in. Maybe curiosity, maybe pain. I ran my hand along the desk I hadn't touched in years. Then I noticed the drawer, the one that was always locked. It was slightly open. Inside was a folder, thick, worn, unlabeled. I don't know what I expected, but not this. Inside was a letter, written by my father, to me, but never sent. I unfolded it with trembling hands, and as I read, the world I knew began to collapse. The letter was dated 5 months before my father passed. His handwriting was still strong, but there were smudges on the ink, as if he had paused while writing, and cried, "My dearest Claire, if you are reading this, I hope it means you found the strength I always saw in you. I know things haven't been fair. I know we didn't show you the love you deserved, not because you were less, but because you were stronger." I sat down right there on the floor, because my knees wouldn't hold. The letter was dated 5 months before my father passed. His handwriting was still strong, but there were smudges on the ink, as if he had paused while writing, and cried, "My dearest Claire, if you are reading this, I hope it means you found the strength I always saw in you. I know things haven't been fair. I know we didn't show you the love you deserved, not because you were less, but because you were stronger. I sat down right there on the floor because my knees wouldn't hold me anymore. Your sister needed so much, or at least that's what we told ourselves. We thought we were protecting her, but in truth, we were enabling her. And in doing so, we failed you. There it was, admitted, plain, clear. I wanted to make it right. There is a second version of the will. It includes you equally. But I fear your mother and Danielle won't let that version see the light of day. My hands clenched the paper. Hard enough that I nearly tore it. He knew they would do this. He tried to stop it, but he died before he could. And they made sure I never saw a dime. Claire, if you find this letter, I beg you to fight for what is yours. Not because of the money, but because you have let others decide your worth for too long. You are not invisible, not to me. Love always, Dad. I folded the letter slowly, as if it were made of glass. Then I sat in silence for a long, long time, until I heard voices downstairs. Danielle and Mom were back, laughing. Car doors slammed. The front door opened. Footsteps. I quickly tucked the letter into my coat pocket and slipped out the back. That night, I didn't sleep. I laid in bed replaying every moment from childhood through that funeral. And suddenly, all the pieces fit. Mom wasn't just distracted. She chose to ignore me. Danielle didn't just need more. She took more, because they gave her permission to. But not anymore. If they wanted a silent sister, they'd miscalculated. The next morning, I took the letter to an attorney. He read it twice. Then he looked at me with a grim smile. This changes everything. It turned out, the original will, the real one, had been updated just weeks before Dad's passing. It split the estate between me and Danielle evenly. But the version filed after his death conveniently reverted to an old draft. There were 2 witnesses on the newer version, but both had disappeared. One moved states, the other, dead. I felt sick someone had cleaned house. But the letter, it was something, a start. The lawyer told me not to say a word, so I didn't. I smiled through family dinners. I let Danielle gloat. Danielle came to my apartment the next day, not to apologize, not to confess, but to intimidate. She stood in my doorway like a storm with mascara. "You're tearing this family apart, Claire." I looked at her calm, even. "You did that the day you erased me from our father's will." Her jaw twitched. "It wasn't like that." "Then how was it?" She said nothing, just stood there, with eyes that had never seen me as her equal, only as her shadow. But that day, she saw something different. Because I didn't shrink, I didn't explain myself, I just closed the door. And for the first time in her life, she was on the outside looking in. A few weeks later, I was called to a mediation meeting. Danielle was there. So was Mom. So were the lawyers. My lawyer presented the letter. The room went still. Mom's face went pale. Danielle tried to laugh it off. This could have been written by anyone. But the lawyer leaned forward. "It's verified. Handwriting analysis confirms it's your father's. Ink matches the batch ordered 6 months before his passing. And it references a revised will with witnesses who both confirm its legitimacy." Danielle's smirk faded. Mom tried to change the subject. "Claire, do you really want to drag our family name through court?" I didn't blink. "You already did." They offered a settlement, a small sum, just enough to make this go away. I didn't even glance at it. "You don't get to buy my silence anymore. This isn't just about the money. It's about the lie." The room was quiet, except for the sound of papers being packed up. Because we weren't settling. We were going to court. And while they panicked, I prepared. In the months that followed, everything they had tried to bury rose to the surface. The revised will. Email trails showing Mom corresponding with the old attorney, urging him to file the outdated version. Bank statements showing Danielle transferring large sums to herself before probate was finalized. Text messages, whispers, and then a voicemail, left by my father, saved on an old home answering machine I hadn't thought to check in years. It was short, but damning. "Claire, I filed the new will today. Keep this message, just in case." I sat in my apartment, staring at the playback button. Tears welled up in my eyes. He'd known, and now I would finish what he started. A trial didn't last long. 3 days, but they were brutal. Danielle cried on the stand. Mom acted frail and confused, but the evidence was clear. The judge ruled in my favor. The house, the assets, the trust, everything was to be split as originally intended. Danielle stormed out of the courtroom. Mom wouldn't look at me. And I didn't feel joy. Not exactly. I felt peace for the first time in decades. Back at the house, I walked through the halls again, not as a visitor, but as someone who finally belonged. In my father's study, I placed his letter in a frame above the desk, and beneath it, I left a note of my own. "You were right, Dad. I'm not invisible, not anymore." I didn't throw a party when the ruling came in. I didn't buy anything flashy. I didn't post about it online. I just sat quietly in the house my father built, the one they tried to erase me from, and let the silence wrap around me like a blanket. A different kind of silence than I'd known before. Not the silence of being ignored, but the silence of finally being heard. Danielle moved out of the house a week after the ruling. She didn't say a word to me. She just hired movers and left behind a trail of perfume and broken trust. I found one of her old journals in the guest room. I didn't mean to snoop, but curiosity and years of being lied to won out. The entries shocked me. They weren't just about shoes and brunches. They were filled with jealousy, bitterness, even fear. Mom always says I deserve more, but sometimes I wonder if Claire sees everything. I think she knows Dad favored her in quiet ways. I can't let that happen. I can't let him choose her. So it hadn't been just about money. It was never just about that. It was about power, control, the need to be seen as more. I put the journal back where I found it, and I didn't mention it. Some ghosts are better left in the drawer. A few weeks later, Mom invited me to lunch at a place we used to go when I was little. She was already seated when I arrived. Her smile was tight, like an old wound reopened. "You look well." I nodded. "I am." She stirred her tea too long before speaking. "I never meant to hurt you." That made me laugh. Not cruelly, just sadly. "You just didn't mean to protect me either." She didn't argue. She looked down at her hands. The same hands that held me when I had nightmares, and handed over everything to Danielle when Dad passed. "You were always so independent," she whispered. "We thought you didn't need us." "I didn't," I said. "But that doesn't mean I didn't want you." We sat in silence. Again, only this time. It was the kind that comes before a goodbye. She reached across the table. I didn't take her hand, but I didn't pull away either. That was enough. After that, I rebuilt my life quietly. I renovated the house. I created a small foundation in my father's name, one that supports young women navigating family legal battles. I called it the second letter, because sometimes that's all it takes, one piece of truth, to turn everything around. Danielle? She faded into the background, moved cities, tried to start over. But the story followed her. People talk. People remember, even the ones who pretended not to see. As for me, I never asked for revenge, only recognition, only fairness, only the right to stand where I belonged. And when I did, I stood tall, not just as the girl who was forgotten, but as the woman who remembered herself.